Hi everyone, my name is Heather. Welcome to my channel. I am so glad you're here. Thank you so much to everyone for all the love on my previous video. I really appreciate it. Today I am so excited because I want to share with you my top 12 books that I read in 2025. And I had such a hard time figuring out which books to put in this list because there were so many good books that I read that I just really enjoyed, and some of the books that are only honorable mentions, I'm actually really surprised that they're only in the honorable mentions. So I'm excited to share that with you. So grab a cozy cuppa or whatever you love to drink. I am having a coffee this morning and I am just going to take a sip and then we'll get started. So before we begin, I just wanted to share some of the rereads that I did this year that I just had to mention are so fabulous. One of them is Goodbye Mr. Chips. I reread this year so I could have it fresh in my memory for a video, and it was just as wonderful as it was the first time I read it. Another one that I read with my son for the first time, but for me it is a reread, and that is The Last Unicorn by Peter Beagle. This is such a good book. I'm really hoping that the Folio Society does an illustrated version of this that is not limited edition. The limited editions are a bit over my budget, but if they do a regular run illustrated version of this, that is definitely going on my wish list. Also, I did a reread with my family book club of Emma, and Emma was just as wonderful as always and loved it. So those were my top 3 rereads of the year. And then I just wanted to hold up some books and do an honorable mention. The first one was a complete surprise. As I told you guys, my Jane Austen project this year was to read Sanditon and read all the Sanditon continuations that I could. And I still have 3 more to go. But one of them just really took me by surprise. It's independently published. And I don't know what I was expecting, but it was actually so great and so lovely. And it's Sanditon on Reflection by D.B. Thomas. There were some plot twists that were very satisfying. And he has a new one coming out, Mr. Darcy Through the Looking Glass. So I'm going to definitely be getting that one as well, because I really enjoyed his writing. Another book I wanted to mention, and it's a series, is these mystery series by Julia Chapman. I am not a huge cozy mystery reader, so I wanted to change it and perhaps try one of the more contemporary cozy mysteries. And so I picked this one up. I found it in Paris at the bookshop, and I loved it because it has Emily Sutton's artwork on the cover. And I read it and I really liked it. It's kind of a combination of a James Herriot novel mixed with an Agatha Christie novel. It's set in Yorkshire, and in fact one of the characters is a vet and everyone refers to him as Harriet. This one ended up being a bit of a redemption story. What's also great about this is it starts in the autumn, September through November. The next one is Christmas, and I believe the following one is this time of year, January through March. Then it goes into spring, so that you can read the series with the seasons if you start in the autumn. Another book I just loved is The Paris Wife by Paula McLean. This is a story told by Ernest Hemingway's wife and her perspective of events in the early years when Ernest Hemingway was establishing himself as a writer, when they moved to Paris, and they meet all these authors there that are referred to as the Lost Generation. F. Scott Fitzgerald, Gertrude Stein, Ezra Pound, to name but a few. And then I also had to mention Sanditon by Jane Austen and another lady who is Marie Dobbs. And Marie Dobbs did a wonderful continuation of this story. It goes seamlessly from Jane Austen. I can't tell the difference, and it's very satisfying. I loved her work. I loved what she did with this, and it was definitely a top read for me. The ending also was very full of action and felt very much like what Jane Austen would have written. And so yeah, I highly recommend this one. I have a couple of middle grades that I really wanted to mention. They're not in my top 12, but I really enjoyed my time spent with them, and that is The Great Turkey Walk by Kathleen Carr. The main character in the story, he doesn't do well in school, he doesn't make great grades, but one of the things that I loved about this is that there are so many different types of intelligences, and just because you don't make great grades, doesn't mean you might not have another intelligence waiting to be discovered. And his intelligence is business. He has this great knack for business, and once he is actually set free from school, his teacher kind of says, you know what, this just isn't working. I think it was his like 3rd or 4th year trying to pass a grade. She set him off and told him it's time for him to venture out and do something different. And so this boy, whose name is Simon, by the way, so Simon takes off and he starts a business. And then the other middle grade I really loved was When Hitler Stole Pink Rabbit. This one was fantastic because in my videos I'm constantly talking about artists and authors who had to escape certain parts of Europe during this time period, which is exactly what happens in this book. This family has to escape from Germany because the father, who is an author, has written things that were not acceptable once the ruling party came to power. And this was just a heartfelt account of this family's escaping from Germany and going from place to place. It was beautifully written from the little girl's perspective. And then finally, I don't know what you guys are going to think of me when you see that this book is not part of my top 12 books. It is only an honorable mention, but it is The Picture of Dorian Gray. I love this book, don't get me wrong. It was really good. It was brilliant, actually. This story that Oscar Wilde came up with is amazing. I've not seen it before, about this man who stays young while a picture that was painted of him grows older and older and reflects what's inside him. Oscar Wilde's voice, his personality, was strong. I couldn't forget that he was telling the story, so I just couldn't get involved with the characters. I'm definitely a character person, but nonetheless, just because it's not on my top 12, it would be my top 13. If I did a top 13, this would be in it. And I really love this version I found at a local bookstore, illustrated by Eugenia Nobati. I definitely would recommend reading this, and I will probably put it in one of my recommendations lists because it's very, very good. But I had had so many other amazing, strong character books that I read this year, but very good book, by the way. That is it for my honorable mentions and my rereads. Now I'm going to share my top 12 books of 2025. So beginning with number 12, The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This one was published in 1850, and my version here is one that I picked up at a local bookstore, and it's illustrated by Robert Quackenbush. I love these illustrations. I just think they are so gorgeous. The story begins with Hester Prynne being escorted out of prison. She has a baby in her arms. She's led up to a scaffold, and she stands there so that the townspeople can jeer at her. She's rather uncomfortable, but she bears it. She looks into the crowd and she makes eye contact with a man. And our story begins from there. And I really loved it because I was under the impression that what the story was about was the unfair treatment of women as opposed to men during that time. A woman had made a mistake and she had to bear the punishment for it. I was totally wrong. It wasn't about that. I mean, it was a little bit part of it, but what it really was about how the truth can set you free, how coming forward with the truth, just exposing the truth and dealing with the consequences is much more freeing than keeping something hidden and living with guilt. It was amazing to watch Hester Prynne's character grow as well. The scarlet letter that she wears on her chest becomes something totally different as you follow her character through the story, and it begins to stand for other things to the people that are in her life. It's beautifully written, and I am very interested now in reading Nathaniel Hawthorne's The House of Seven Gables because I really enjoyed this when I read it. And I did read this in high school, but I don't think I got anything near of what I got out of it when I read it this time. There is one chapter in this book called The Minister's Vigil, and it is absolutely beautiful. The writing and the description is just amazing. And also, for those of you who love to read seasonally, another thing I thought was that this would be a great book to read in the autumn, but actually it's mostly set in summer, late summer, spring, and by the seaside as well. So my number 11 is actually a middle grade book, and it is Secret Letters from 0 to 10 by Susie Morgenstern. And Susie Morgenstern is very interesting because she's actually from Newark, New Jersey, and she moved to France and has been there for 30 years, and she publishes books, and she publishes them in French. This one was actually published in French in 1996, I believe, and then translated into English in 1998. And it won the Le Prix Totem, which I believe is the French equivalent of the Newbery Awards. So I thought that was really interesting, but it's just such a great book. We have Ernest, and he's living with his 80-year-old grandmother, and his 80-year-old grandmother is doing the best job she can. She's 80, and she's trying to raise this kid. Their life is pretty dull, and in walks Victoria. He meets Victoria one day at school, and she really shakes up his life and spreads positivity, not just to Ernest, but has sort of a trickle-down effect where it affects the other characters in the story. And it's a message about how being positive can spread, and it was delightful. And I will probably read this again because it just made me so happy. My number 10 is Hatchet by Gary Paulson, and this edition is illustrated by Drew Willis. It's the Simon & Schuster 30th anniversary edition, and it's just beautifully illustrated throughout in black and white. And this book was such a page turner. It's a survival story, sort of a coming of age survival story. And we follow Brian, who is on his way to visit his dad in the Canadian wilderness. His dad works out there. And he is flying in a little bush plane, and the bush plane crashes. And Brian finds himself having to survive in the wilderness with only a hatchet that his mom had gifted him. It really was such a page turner. There's wonderful interactions with animals, not all of them good. I think what I love most about this story is it's about learning self-reliance and about thinking about things before you do them, and consequence, and what could happen if you make a mistake in such a situation. But also it translates into life as well. So now we are at number 9, and that is F. Scott Fitzgerald, Tender is the Night. And this edition that I'm showing here is published by Elma Classics, and it's not illustrated, although the cover illustration is by George Barbier, who was a fashion designer, costume designer, illustrator, who really showed the elegance of the 1920s in all of his work. I just want to say that Tender is the Night is definitely one that you might want to check for trigger warnings. There are a couple of things in here that will definitely bring you down a little bit, but it is so worth it. We follow a married couple. They're in the French Riviera, and we follow their lives and the people they meet and the secrets they hold and the face that they put forward for society. What this book was about for me was more about how things that happen to you in your childhood trauma, how it can affect you and those that you love in your life. Went into this book thinking it was going to be one thing, and it turned out to be something completely different, and a character that I had already made up my mind to dislike was actually more honorable than I had expected. And it was just a wonderful read, so worthy. It was published 9 years after The Great Gatsby, and I believe this is F. Scott Fitzgerald's final novel. I also love that it has some wonderful literary references to Ulysses, Lewis Carroll, Jules Verne. It's different from The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby, the story is very straightforward. This one is more like an onion. This one you have to sort of peel back and get to know it. It is a tragedy, but it's a tragedy in a different way than The Great Gatsby is. It's a really well-written novel. My number 8 is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. I love this book. It's an epistolary novel. An epistolary novel is a novel that is comprised of letters. And we follow Sybil von Antwerp. For work, she was the clerk to a judge. But she also has this habit of sitting down every morning or every day and writing a well thought out, purposeful letter and sending it to somebody, not just friends and family, but also to authors and people like Walt Disney and Jackie Kennedy. And it's just fantastic. And we follow her life, her tragedies, her gains, her happinesses, her regrets through these letters. It's full of literary references. One of the friends that she writes to, they always conclude each letter with what they're reading and some of the thoughts that they felt when they were reading it. Two of them are Wuthering Heights, for example, and A Murder on the Orient Express. Also, one of the people that she wrote to was Larry McMurtry, who is the author of Lonesome Dove. She wrote to him when he had a bookstore at the time, as well as C.S. Lewis was another one that she wrote to. It is just such a beautiful story, and it's also a story about getting older, the hardships of the aging process, but also the surprises that can still come along and fill your life with happiness. And it was just such a good book. I wanted to send this to so many people for the holidays. My number 7 book is a YA novel. It's Magic Flutes by Eva Ibbotson, and this is such a beautiful romantic story. If you are looking for something to read in February, this is a fantastic one. The title comes from the opera The Magic Flute, which was Mozart's final opera. The Magic Flute is instrumental in the story. We follow Guy, and Guy is abandoned as a child, abandoned as a baby, an infant. He goes through the orphanage system. He eventually gets picked up by a foster mother who grows to really love him and sees him as her son, and he sees her as his mother. She offers him the first stability that he's ever had in his life, and he responds very well to it. He starts doing well in school. He eventually makes it to university. While he's in university, he meets and falls in love with a woman that, I guess it doesn't go well. He quits school. He feels like the only thing worth having is wealth, because then he can attain what he wants in life. He goes off into the world and he makes a fortune, and a very good fortune. He becomes very wealthy, so wealthy in fact that he decides to buy this castle in order to impress this woman that he loves. It's a beautiful story set in Austria and Vienna and then the Austrian countryside. It begins in London but then moves into Austria. The characters are just so wonderful. I really enjoyed the characters. I missed them when I was finished reading this. And it's so full of operatic and musical reference. I really adore this book, and I recommend it for anyone who's looking for a clean romance, a good romance to read. It's very enjoyable. Now we are at number 6, and I have another young adult book, and that is The Borrowed House by Hilda von Stuck. I'm saying young adult, but actually I would say upper middle grade in my opinion. This book was amazing, so unexpected. It's a coming of age story, but a different kind of coming of age story. It's about realizing that something you believed and something you thought is actually very different from what really is the truth. We follow 12-year-old Jana, and she is going to join her family in Amsterdam. They are living in a house that used to belong to a Jewish family. When Amsterdam was occupied, the Jewish people that were living in this house either fled or were captured. And now in this house are 2 different German families, and one is occupying one floor and the other is occupying another floor. Jana goes to join her parents, who are one of the families. In this house should be a very valuable piece of art that has just gone missing. No one can find it. And the danger is that if they don't find it, they could get blamed for having stolen it. So they're trying to find this artwork. Jana really grows and she changes, and she comes to realize that what she thought was not actually the truth. There's so many passages in here that are so courageous and well said, and I just loved it, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so now we are getting to my top 5, and number 5 is Percival Everett's James. I cannot tell you how much I loved this book. I did listen to it on audio, and the audio is fantastic. If I ever do a video that talks about my top audio books, this book will be on it. It won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 2025. It tells the story of Huck Finn and Jim's journey down the Mississippi, but from Jim or James's perspective. And it is so good. A story well told. If you know the story of Huck Finn, what happens in Huck Finn is that Huck Finn is trying to escape his father, and Jim is in danger of being sold. So the two of them take off on a raft down the Mississippi, and as they're sailing down the Mississippi, they come into contact with some very interesting characters, and they have adventures in that way. The same story is being told here, but through James's eyes, through his perspective. I loved it, but I also do want to say you don't need to read Huckleberry Finn to enjoy this. Probably what I just told you about Huckleberry Finn would be more than enough. It's set in 1861, and from the beginning you get a sense of what's going to happen in the novel, because Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer are sneaking up on James. James is pretending to be asleep. They think that they're pulling a trick on him, but actually he's awake for it. He knows what's going on. And so the whole book goes. I will say, check for trigger warnings. As with any adult book that is set during slavery, you're going to come into events that can be really difficult to read about. And you do find that in here, but you also find it surprisingly lighthearted and funny at times. I was kind of expecting it to be all heavy, and it wasn't all heavy. I cannot tell you how much I love this book, and as I said, I listened to the audiobook read by Dominique Hoffman, and he was perfect, and it was amazing. And I picked this one up because I want to now read it with the audiobook and read along with it. I love doing that sometimes as well. Now we're at number 4, and my number 4 is a young adult classic by Jean Webster, Daddy Longlegs. This is actually a reread for me, but I decided to include it because it has been so long since I read it the first time that I couldn't remember any details. It was really like reading it for the first time all over again when I read it earlier this year. It's an epistolary novel, again, a novel made up of letters. And we follow Jerusha, who later calls herself Judy. And Judy is the lucky recipient of generosity by a man who she only caught a glimpse of walking away. And the shadow was cast just so, where his legs appeared really long, so she started calling him Daddy Longlegs. And the only requirement of this gift of money so that she can go to university is that she write him a letter once a month updating him on her progress, which she does. But her letters are animated, and they're fun, and they're full of drawings. Jean Webster herself did the illustrations that are just wonderful. Here, I'll show you one of them when Judy's playing basketball. And it's just an absolutely delightful book. It's a coming-of-age novel, it's a romance, but what I really love about it is, again, just the characters. I really loved the characters. I love the seasonal descriptions. I just loved every moment that I spent with this book. By the way, speaking of Mark Twain, Jean Webster is the great-grand niece, I believe, of Mark Twain. So I thought that was interesting to tell you guys. I also love Judy's character in particular because she's not just a girl who sits back on her laurels, and when she can, she tries to get a scholarship so that the mysterious benefactor doesn't have to spend as much money on her. She doesn't take it for granted, and she tries to find ways where she can actually contribute. And I just think that's such a remarkable thing about her character, and I really loved it. So now we're at number 3, and number 3 is Jojo Moyes, The Giver of Stars. And I thought this was amazing. It was sent to me on recommendation from my stepmother, who said it was the best book she had read last year. and it was just beautiful. It's one of those new in town kind of stories. Alice is living in England, and she meets Bennett, who is from Kentucky, and they get married, and Alice moves with Bennett to small town Kentucky, and things don't really go the way that she thought they were going to go. She begins working with a group of traveling librarians and delivering books to people who don't have access to books in the mountains. And it is gorgeous, full of literary reference. If you are a person who loves books that reference other works of literature, you're going to love this one, because Black Beauty, The Red Pony, Gone with the Wind, Tender is the Night is another one that was mentioned. It's just beautiful, but what I really loved about it is, again, the characters. I was so in love with these characters. I really missed them. This was one of those books where when I closed it, I Googled to see if there was a movie in production that I could look forward to seeing, because I couldn't wait to see a movie of this book. My number 2 is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. A Tale of Two Cities, it is so exciting. There were times when I could not put it down. It was just a wonderful story, amazing, beautiful language that exemplifies the contradictions between two different ways of thinking. It begins with the famous line, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." The story begins with a prisoner being released from the Bastille, and he has been there for 18 years. His 18-year-old daughter, he doesn't know her. His 18-year-old daughter is sent for because this prisoner, as a coping mechanism, he makes shoes and he doesn't connect with the real world. And his daughter comes, and they're hoping that his daughter can bring him back to reality, and she does. And when he's well enough, they travel to London. Fast forward some years, and they are at a trial. 2 gentlemen are involved in this trial. One is the accused, and one is a defense lawyer. And both of these men are in love with this daughter. Her name is Lucy, by the way. It's just a beautiful book. Above all, it's really a story of redemption. And I don't know what anyone has told you about this book, but this is a love triangle book. I did not expect that. I forgot to mention on my last video, but there is going to be a BBC miniseries of A Tale of Two Cities, and Kit Harington is actually going to play Sydney Carton, who is just such a wonderful character. I'm very excited about that. And yeah, it's just beautiful, and it is riveting, and especially the end. Charles Dickens wrote 2 historical fictions, and this is one of them. The other one is Barnaby Rudge. The build-up towards the French Revolution and the events that propel the nation towards that best of times yet very terrible time are explained, and it's really interesting to read through it and move towards it happening. Also, what I love about this are the references to Greek mythology. There's this one character, she's a French woman, and she is knitting. She's always knitting. Charles Dickens likens her to one of the fates from Greek mythology, the fate Atropos, the one that's always cutting the thread, and when she cuts the thread, that means that your life is over. Everything he writes is so clever. There's so much foreshadowing that, honestly, I knew what was going to happen in the novel, even though I had never seen anything or knew what was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen because of the foreshadowing, but it doesn't matter. You still want to experience it. And this book has made me want to read more Charles Dickens, and I am excited about that. It was unexpected. I thought this was going to be work, and it wasn't. The first 3 chapters took a little bit of work, but after that, I was riveted, and I could not put it down, and the end was so affecting and beautiful. This edition is illustrated by Roland Wheelwright and John McLennan. Roland Wheelwright is a painter from Australia, and John McLennan is an American caricaturist and does the sketches, and you see both of their illustrations throughout. So this would be Roland Wheelwright, and this would be John McLennan. And they're all throughout this book. I really love these Seawolf Press editions. Here's another one by Roland Wheelwright, another one by John McLennan. So yeah, that is number 2, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. All right, guys, now we are at my number 1, and my number 1 book of the year is a book that I read on my mother's recommendation, and I read it first through audiobook, which is another book that would go on my top list of audiobooks if I did an audiobook video. But that is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I love this book so much, and I cannot wait to see the movie that's coming out. If you have not read this, pick it up or get the audio version. I highly recommend the audio version. It's very good. We follow a man who wakes up and he has no idea what's going on. There are these mechanical arms that are helping him, feeding him, nursing him and such, but he doesn't have any clue why he's there, what his name is, and we follow him as he slowly comes to realize and remember why he's there. It's a book that is the journey or the quest kind of story, but it's also a redemption story of sorts as well. It's one of those books that I just cannot really go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil it for you. Everything I've told you is on the back of the book. Actually, probably less than what is on the back of the book. I went into this knowing absolutely nothing about it. What I really love about these are the problem solving. You know, he's got problems and he solves them, and then he has more problems and he solves them. And you get the same thing in The Martian. I have this wonderful paperback signed by Andy Weir that I picked up at Comic-Con San Diego one year. You get the same sort of thing with Project Hail Mary, and you also don't have to be huge into sci-fi to enjoy this. I'm actually a lover of sci-fi, but I tend to watch it more than I read it. If you're not somebody who reads a lot of sci-fi, you're still going to find this so enjoyable. The only thing that I wish about this book, as well as The Martian, is that there was a junior novelization version of them, because these are the types of books I would love to put in my son's hands, because they teach the value of looking at problems and choosing to work on them and fix them. There are some freakouts. They are humans in these books. It's such a good lesson to look at problems and to solve them. In this one, it's toned down a lot more. There's still a couple of adult moments where I probably would want to read it first just to see if it's right for your child, but it's different from The Martian in that way. Anyway, I cannot say enough about this book. I really highly recommend it, and it is just a fantastic book, guys, honestly. When I finished it, I was in the kitchen. I was washing dishes, I was crying, and then I had to dry my hands and then go back and re-listen to the end again because it was just so amazing. So anyway, my top book of 2025, Project Hail Mary. Well, that is it. I hope you have enjoyed this sharing of my top 12 books of 2025 and that you found some of these interesting or enticing. Perhaps they've inspired your reading. I want to just say thank you again so much to everyone for all the thumbs up and the watches and the rewatching and the comments on my last video, and also the hypes. I guess I can get hyped now. I didn't even know that last time. So thank you so much for that. That was such a lovely surprise. So anyway, I just want to say thank you, and I will be back soon with another video. So until then, I hope you take care, and I will chat soon. Bye.